establishing control over the central dark squares. This English opening immediately influences the board's equilibrium. Gaining kingside space, black prepares to fianchetto their bishop, aiming for long-term queenside pressure. Building a fianchetto setup, white aims for long-term diagonal pressure and solid pawn structure. Developing the dark-squared bishop to the long diagonal creates immediate pressure and eyes the kingside. Positioning the bishop on the long diagonal offers immense attacking potential, preparing to pressure black's queenside pawns. Black immediately challenges white's central setup, creating dynamic pawn tension that promises rich positional play ahead. Developing the knight now solidifies control over central squares, anticipating potential pawn advances. A careful placement of the knight, intending to reroute it to f5 or d5 for active play while supporting a central pawn push. Solidifying the center and preparing for kingside castling, this move modestly expands white's territorial claim. Solidifying the pawn chain, this move prepares to challenge the center and aims for a robust queenside expansion. Controlling the center's heart, white boldly claims more space, preparing for an aggressive pawn storm or a central pawn break. Solidifying the pawn chain and preparing for a kingside pawn push, this move anchors black's central control and maintains flexibility. Developing the knight to a more central square aims to support the pawn push and challenge black's central control. Securing a pawn outpost on the queenside, a6 prepares to expand on that wing while subtly limiting white's knight influence. Foiling black's queenside expansion by proactively securing territory, there prevents future pawn breaks and solidifies white's control. Anchoring this flank, black solidifies pawn structure, albeit conceding some central space and potential for queenside expansion. Developing the bishop to eye the queenside flank solidifies white's central control and prepares for potential expansion. Developing the bishop to e6 offers excellent diagonal coverage, reinforcing the d6 pawn and preparing for potential pawn breaks. Securing the monarch initiates a period of stability, allowing for future central expansion or wing play. Positioning the queen here bolsters the kingside defense and eyes potential advances on the queenside, anticipating a slow, strategic buildup. Solidifying the queenside pawn structure now, it preemptively discourages black's potential. b5 advance, creating more breathing room for white's pieces. Initiating kingside aggression by pushing the h-pawn, the move aims to disrupt white's harmonious piece placement and potentially create weaknesses around their castled king. Striking at the kingside pawn chain with h4 challenges black's aggressive pawn push, potentially opening lines towards the enemy monarch while solidifying white's central control. Challenging the bishop's presence directly might open up lines towards your king, creating immediate defensive concerns. Initiating a central pawn break, this move challenges black's cramped queenside and aims to seize initiative by opening lines. Securing the monarch is paramount, especially with white's flank pawn advances creating potential storm clouds. This maneuver reestablishes defensive solidarity. Slinging the rook to the second rank is a prophylactic measure, anticipating potential pressure on the kingside and seeking a more active role later. Sacrificing the bishop opens the g-file, creating immediate pressure on white's castled king. Capturing the bishop exposes your king significantly, creating a dangerous central void. Black ignites a central explosion, daring white's king to weather the coming storm of open lines. Striking at the center with **dxc 5 * immediately resolves the pawn tension, potentially opening lines for white's pieces while black grapples with recapturing. Disrupting white's central pawn structure with this capture forces a concession and opens attacking avenues. Reclaiming central space with the pawn push opens critical diagonal lines for the queen and bishop. Reclaiming central space and disrupting white's pawn structure is a vital counter to the aggressive pawn advance. Unpinning the pinned rook and opening the queen trade, this prepares a pawn push that aims to disrupt black's structure. Exchanging queens opens the path for your knight to become a central defender, and initiate a fight for neglected squares. Reactivating the rook along the d-file offers potential activity, aiming to seize open lines and challenge black's central control. Unburdening the queen side, black simplifies, accepting an isolated pawn for potential activity. Relying on the rook's increased mobility after the capture opens lines for a potential kingside pawn push. This maneuver skillfully repositions the bishop, preparing to contest the open d-file and potentially exploit white's slightly uncoordinated pieces. Pressing the queenside further, this maneuver aims to restrict black's minor pieces and potentially establish a lasting weakness. Sensing the open e-file, black repositions the rook, aiming to contest control and potentially activate the piece. Asserting dominion over the central files, this rook boldly penetrates enemy territory. Injecting aggression, this move attempts to disrupt white's central control and open lines for the queen's bishop. Seizing the open file with the rook drastically alters the pawn structure, potentially creating unstoppable passed pawns. Black challenges the pawn grab, liberating the knight and opening lines for counterplay. Unlocking the d-file opens avenues for the rook, while the pawn structure on the queenside looks precarious for black. Shifting the king allows for better defense against the rook on the 7th rank and prepares to contest open files. Boldly stepping onto the f4 square, the knight initiates a potent threat towards black's isolated queen's rook and shores up the kingside defenses. Unleashing the rook presents an immediate tactical challenge on the queenside, forcing white to address the open file and potential weaknesses. The rook's repositioning aims to exploit the open files and pressure black's weakened pawn structure. Re-establishing central influence and preparing for a potential exchange sacrifice to disrupt white's pawn structure. Unleashing a knight to an outpost, this maneuver aims to exploit the compromised kingside and prepare for future advances.